02:46 a.m. The night was quiet, humid, and still. Then the alarms shattered the silence. Within seconds, radar screens across Andersen Air Force Base lit up in red. 40 incoming signatures, unknown, fast, high. In the command bunker, voices turned sharp. Multiple launches detected from mainland China. The officer's tone was cold but urgent. The Pacific sky began to glow as streaks of light crossed the horizon. 40 ballistic missiles, all heading for one place, the U.S. island of Guam. For the first time since World War II, America's frontline base in the Pacific was under direct attack. Sirens wailed, soldiers ran to shelters, systems armed. The island shook as the first impacts hit. Fire spread near the port and communication towers went down. The world had changed in under 3 minutes. But this was not the end. Within hours, the United States would strike back, with precision, speed, and force no one saw coming. Before we reveal how the U.S. Navy answered one of the boldest attacks in modern history, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and press the bell icon. Stay with us till the end, as we uncover how America's response reshaped the balance of power in the Pacific and sent a message the world could not ignore. For months before that night, the tension in the Pacific had been rising like a silent storm. It started with small things: Chinese naval patrols edging closer to Taiwan, U.S. reconnaissance flights over the South China Sea, and warships shadowing each other near disputed islands. Each week brought new warnings from Beijing, accusing Washington of provocation. Each week, the Pentagon replied with the same message: freedom of navigation will not be threatened. Guam stood at the center of it all. A small island, but one of America's most important outposts. Home to Andersen Air Force Base, Naval Base Guam, and thousands of U.S. troops, it was the backbone of U.S. operations in the Pacific. From Guam, bombers could reach the South China Sea in hours. Submarines could move silently toward contested waters. It was not just a base. It was a symbol of reach, readiness, and deterrence. To China, that made it a target. In early June, American intelligence began to notice something unusual. Chinese rocket force units in the eastern provinces of Anhui and Fujian were conducting large-scale drills, bigger than normal and unusually close to civilian areas. Satellite photos showed transport vehicles loaded with long white canisters, missile launchers. The type matched the DF-26, known to analysts as the Guam Killer. With a range of nearly 4,000 kilometers, it could strike the island directly from mainland China. The Pentagon tracked the movement carefully. Analysts warned that Beijing might be testing America's response time, probing radar limits or missile defense coordination. Still, no one expected a full strike, at least not yet. Meanwhile, Chinese state media began to speak louder. Commentators warned that U.S. encirclement could not continue. Editorials said China had the right to break chains and remove threats. The words were sharp, but to many in Washington it felt like more of the same rhetoric that had been heard for years. That was the mistake. By late July, American carrier groups had increased presence in the Philippine Sea. The USS Ronald Reagan and USS Theodore Roosevelt operated near Guam in alternating patrols. U.S. Navy submarines, including Virginia-class attack boats, moved undetected beneath the waves, maintaining constant surveillance. At Andersen Air Force Base, B-1B and B-52 bombers rotated through joint exercises with Japan and Australia. The island's defenses were strong, with THAAD missile interceptors, Patriot batteries, and Aegis-equipped ships nearby. Yet in war, strength can sometimes bring false comfort. 3 days before the attack, radar teams in Guam recorded strange interference. Short bursts of electronic noise cut across certain frequency bands. It lasted only seconds but appeared again the next night. The pattern matched known Chinese jamming techniques. A warning was issued, but no immediate action followed. Hours before dawn on the day of the attack, satellites picked up increased communication traffic between Chinese military bases in Fujian and Hainan. At the same time, several Chinese naval vessels shifted course toward the Paracel Islands. At 02:41 a.m., U.S. radars detected sudden high-energy heat signatures from deep inside mainland China. Analysts barely had time to confirm. The launch arcs matched DF-26 trajectories. Within seconds, 40 missiles were airborne. The order went out across Guam. Condition red. Incoming missiles. Take cover. In bunkers, command officers tracked the targets on glowing screens. The first intercept attempts began as THAAD batteries locked onto their marks. Alarms echoed through every corridor, every hangar, every sleeping quarter. There was no doubt now. This was no drill. As those missiles streaked through the upper atmosphere, the world shifted toward a dangerous new chapter. This was not just an attack on a base. It was a test of America's defense, China's resolve, and the fragile peace of the Indo-Pacific. Guam, the island fortress, had just become the front line of a new kind of war. But what came next would shock both sides. Within minutes of the impacts, the U.S. Navy's response would begin, swift, precise, and global in scale. 02:46 a.m. The first missile entered radar range, operators confirmed. DF-26 ballistic type, multiple inbound, 40+. Seconds later, radar screens filled with red lines converging on the island. It was a coordinated strike. The Chinese rocket force had launched a full-scale barrage. High above the Pacific, the missiles traveled at speeds exceeding Mach 10, 10 times the speed of sound. The first wave carried conventional warheads, the second, hypersonic glide vehicles. Their target list was clear: Andersen Air Force Base, Opera Harbor, communication arrays, and power grids. 02:49 a.m. THAAD systems activated. Missile crews locked onto targets and fired interceptors into the sky. The air shimmered as defensive rockets streaked upward, colliding with the incoming threats in flashes of white light. Out of the first 10 missiles, 6 were destroyed mid-air. The others broke apart, but fragments still rained down. Shockwaves rolled across the island. 02:52 a.m. A DF-26 missile evaded interception and slammed into a fuel depot near the southern base perimeter. The explosion was massive. Flames reached 200 feet high. A second missile hit near a communication tower, cutting power to parts of the base. Sirens blared. Emergency lights flickered on in underground shelters. Soldiers and pilots moved to battle stations. Inside the Andersen command bunker, U.S. Pacific Command officers relayed real-time data to Hawaii and Washington. The voice of Admiral Rob Westbrook, commander of Indo-Pacific operations, was calm but sharp. Confirm attack origin. Prepare counter-response. Prioritize base integrity and civilian zones. 02:55 a.m. A second wave appeared, this time faster and lower. DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicles entered Guam's airspace. Their unpredictable flight paths confused tracking systems. Some were intercepted, but others came too close. One exploded near the coastline, sending shockwaves through residential areas. Windows shattered miles away, dozens were injured. By 03:10 a.m., the island shook under continuous explosions. The air was thick with smoke and dust, yet even in chaos, the response began to take shape. U.S. cyber units in Hawaii and California launched digital counterattacks, targeting the Chinese Eastern Theater's communication grids. At the same time, orders were issued to submarines in the Philippine Sea. 03:18 a.m. From beneath the dark ocean, 2 Virginia-class submarines, the USS Missouri and USS North Carolina, received coded orders. Their mission: strike Chinese radar sites along the coast. Within minutes, Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from underwater tubes, breaking the surface and heading west at supersonic speed. In the skies above Guam, F-15EX fighters scrambled for air patrol. Despite the ongoing barrage, pilots lifted off through smoke and debris. Their objective: defend any remaining assets and assist with mid-air intercept coordination. 03:25 a.m. U.S. Space Force satellites tracked the launch origins inside China. The data confirmed three main launch zones, near Xining, Anhui, and Fujian provinces. Analysts warned that this level of coordination meant the attack had been planned for weeks. 03:30 a.m. The USS Ronald Reagan, stationed east of the Philippine Sea, launched a full-scale air operation. FA-18 Super Hornets and EA-18 Growlers took off with jamming pods and precision-guided missiles. Their destination, neutralize any remaining Chinese naval radars near the Paracel Islands. Meanwhile, stealth bombers were on the move. From Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, two B-2 Spirits had already been airborne for hours on routine deterrence patrols. Upon receiving confirmation of the Guam strike, they were redirected toward pre-selected Chinese military installations. The world was now watching a real-time escalation. At 03:46 a.m., the last Chinese missile hit the outskirts of Apra Harbor. Damage reports flowed in, several hangars destroyed, 2 supply ships damaged, 27 service members dead, more than 100 injured. Yet the base remained operational. The defense had held, barely. Within hours, global media broke the story. China launches missile strike on U.S. territory. Stock markets in Tokyo and London plunged. The UN called an emergency meeting. For the first time in modern history, 2 nuclear powers had exchanged direct missile fire. By 04:15 a.m., U.S. retaliatory strikes were underway across the Pacific. Chinese radar stations in Hainan went dark. Communication hubs in Fujian were disabled by precision Tomahawk hits. The Chinese rocket force had stopped launching. By dawn, the fires in Guam still burned. The smell of fuel and ash lingered in the air. But through the smoke, the American flag still flew above Andersen Air Force Base. The island had taken a heavy hit, yet it had endured. And while the world feared what might come next, deep in the Pentagon's command center, one message echoed through every secure line. The United States will respond decisively. The Pacific remains ours. The attack on Guam was not random. It was planned with precision, using China's most advanced missile technology. The backbone of the strike came from the DF-26 ballistic missile, a weapon Beijing calls the carrier killer. The DF-26 has a range of nearly 4,000 kilometers, capable of hitting targets as far as Guam, Australia, or even parts of Alaska. It can carry both nuclear and conventional warheads, and its payload can be changed in under an hour. The missile is launched from mobile trucks, making it difficult to track and destroy before launch. Each DF-26 travels at over Mach 10, about 7,600 miles per hour. That means once fired, it can reach Guam in just over 12 minutes. The missile climbs high into the upper atmosphere, then re-enters at a steep angle, releasing decoys to confuse interceptors. This is what makes it so hard to stop. Alongside the DF-26, China used the DF-17 hypersonic glide vehicle, a newer and even more dangerous system. Unlike normal ballistic missiles, the DF-17 doesn't follow a predictable arc. After being launched by a rocket booster, it detaches and glides through the atmosphere at speeds over Mach 10. It can maneuver side to side, change altitude, and strike from unexpected angles. This gives it a high chance of slipping past radar systems and missile shields. The DF-17's warhead is smaller but extremely precise, accurate to within a few meters. Now, let's look at how the U.S. defenses responded. Guam's main protection lies in the THAAD system, Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. It's designed to detect, track, and intercept ballistic missiles during their final descent. Each THAAD battery uses powerful ANTPY-2 radars capable of scanning over 1,800 kilometers into the sky. The system fires interceptor missiles that destroy incoming threats by impact. Not by explosion, but by kinetic energy. It's like hitting a bullet with another bullet. During the attack, THAAD and Aegis Ashore systems worked together. The Aegis Ashore, which shares the same technology as the Navy's Aegis destroyers, used SM-3 and SM-6 interceptors to engage lower-altitude missiles. Despite that, American systems performed better than many expected. Out of 40 missiles, analysts estimate that 22 were intercepted before impact. Another 8 missed or malfunctioned mid-flight. 10 hit near or within Guam's perimeter. It was a costly but partially successful defense. Behind the missile shields, advanced sensors and satellites played a vital role. The U.S. Space Force monitored the launches in real time from geosynchronous orbit, tracking each missile's heat trail and flight pattern. Those signals were instantly relayed to Indo-Pacific Command and to ships in the Philippine Sea. The coordination between space, air, and sea units allowed for a near-instant response. The counterattack was built on that same network. 2 Virginia-class submarines, the USS Missouri and USS North Carolina, launched a combined 42 Tomahawk land attack missiles, TLAMs, toward Chinese radar and communication stations. Each Tomahawk traveled over 1,000 miles, guided by GPS and satellite imagery, striking its target with less than 5-meter accuracy. At the same time, stealth bombers joined the response. The B-2 Spirit, invisible to radar, can carry 16 precision-guided bombs deep into enemy territory. Using refueling support over the Pacific, they flew undetected toward coastal radar arrays that had guided China's launch systems. Within 4 hours of the first missile strike, several key Chinese radar and command sites went offline. Cyber units also played a hidden but powerful role. Working from bases in Hawaii and California, U.S. cyber teams targeted the digital backbone of China's Eastern Theater Command. They overloaded communication relays, shut down radar feedback loops, and delayed new launch sequences. This prevented a second wave of missile launches. The Pentagon later revealed that Guam's radar network had received a data delay of only 47 seconds between detection and first interception, an impressive speed under stress. However, the event exposed weaknesses: limited interceptor numbers, software strain under saturation, and vulnerability to hypersonic weapons. This engagement became the first real-world test of a fully integrated U.S. missile defense network. It showed the power and limits of American technology when faced with coordinated high-speed threats. In those few hours, decades of planning were put to the test. And though Guam took damage, the systems worked well enough to prevent total destruction. The response that followed would show that America was far from beaten, and that every strike would bring an answer. By sunrise, the skies over Guam were gray with smoke. Fires burned near the coastline. The sound of sirens mixed with the hum of helicopters carrying the wounded. Emergency crews worked around the clock, dousing flames and clearing debris from runways. Despite the chaos, Andersen Air Force Base was still operational. That fact alone was a victory. Damage reports came in by mid-morning. 2 fuel storage tanks destroyed, 3 hangars gone, a communications hub hit by fragments, 30 aircraft damaged or grounded, 27 personnel dead, 113 injured. But the command network, radar control, and air defense systems all remained functional. Guam had been bruised, not broken. By that time, the U.S. counterattack was already underway. From submarines in the Philippine Sea, Tomahawk cruise missiles struck radar stations and launch control centers in China's coastal provinces. Within 6 hours of the initial attack, 12 Chinese radar and missile sites were hit. Satellite images later confirmed widespread damage to command bunkers and tracking stations. At the same time, U.S. Air Force bombers targeted military airfields near Fujian. Precision-guided munitions disabled runways and hangars believed to house DF-26 and DF-17 systems. The attacks were calculated, powerful enough to cripple missile launch operations, but careful to avoid civilian centers. The message was clear. The U.S. would strike back fast, but not recklessly. In Washington, the Pentagon released a short statement confirming limited defensive and proportional action. The tone was firm but measured. The White House called the assault on Guam a direct act of aggression and demanded immediate de-escalation. Allies across the Pacific, Japan, Australia, and the Philippines, declared full support for the United States. China's state media, however, framed the event differently. It called the missile launches a warning against what it termed foreign interference. But privately, Beijing faced backlash from global powers and deep concern within its own economy. Stock markets in Hong Kong and Shanghai plunged nearly 7% within hours. Oil prices spiked worldwide. Shipping routes across the South China Sea froze as insurance rates soared. By the next day, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency session. Countries demanded both sides step back from the brink. While tensions stayed high, the exchange did not escalate further. Behind closed doors, diplomatic channels worked quickly to prevent a second strike. On Guam, the cleanup began. Engineers restored power and communication lines. Military planes resumed patrols within 48 hours. A week later, B-1B bombers were seen taking off from Andersen Air Force Base, proof that the island's defense network was still alive. Pentagon officials later said that without the THAAD system and the rapid coordination of U.S. forces, casualties could have been 10 times higher. The partial success of missile interception had saved thousands of lives and kept the Pacific from spiraling into a full-scale war. But while the immediate danger had passed, one truth remained clear. The balance of power in the Pacific had changed forever. The attack on Guam marked a turning point in modern warfare. It wasn't just about missiles or machines. It was about speed, data, and the new face of conflict. In less than 20 minutes, two of the world's strongest militaries had exchanged fire across thousands of miles. There were no battle lines, no trenches, only algorithms, satellites, and decisions made in seconds. For the men and women on Guam, it was more than strategy. It was survival. Many of them never left their posts, even as explosions shook the ground above them. Pilots flew through burning skies to keep radar coverage alive. Medics pulled injured airmen from wreckage and returned to help others. These moments revealed the quiet strength behind the U.S. uniform. Duty even when the odds seemed impossible. The Pentagon later described the event as the first large-scale missile exchange of the digital age. It forced a new reality on military planners. Hypersonic weapons had changed the rules. Missile defense, no matter how advanced, could no longer guarantee total protection. The next wars would be fought not just with missiles, but with data, and whoever controlled information controlled survival. Politically, the strike redrew invisible lines across the Pacific. China had demonstrated power, but it had also exposed its limits. The United States had taken the hit, absorbed the shock, and still managed to strike back within hours. To allies, it was proof that American deterrence still held firm. To adversaries, it was a warning. The Pacific was not undefended. In Washington, President and defense officials honored those who lost their lives. They spoke of resilience, courage, and the promise to rebuild stronger. Plans for advanced intercept systems and satellite-based missile tracking moved forward faster than ever before. And on Guam, as the smoke cleared and the island returned to calm, one message spread among the troops: we held the line. The night Guam burned would be remembered not as a defeat, but as the dawn of a new chapter, where courage met technology and readiness decided survival. The Pacific may have trembled that night, but the resolve of those who defended it only grew stronger. If you want to understand how events like this shape our world, make sure to subscribe, like, and turn on the bell icon, because the next chapter in this story of power, deterrence, and survival is only just beginning.